Hi, I'm Allison Pease, Associate Provost for Institutional Effectiveness at John Jay College, and this is Season 6 of our Distinguished Teaching Prize podcast interviews, in which we celebrate innovative, student-centered teaching and learn from the college's most distinguished faculty. In today's episode, I interview Nina Rose Fischer, Assistant Professor of Social Welfare in the Interdisciplinary Studies Department for the past 7 years. Professor Fischer is currently serving as a faculty fellow in social justice pedagogies in the Teaching and Learning Center. I begin the interview by asking her what winning the Distinguished Teaching Prize means to her.
A wonderful way to celebrate my tenure and promotion. I cannot imagine a bigger honor and a more perfect punctuation to the culmination of the 7 years on the tenure track. I'm very, very fortunate to be in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies, where we really center our teaching around our students, and we care deeply about how our students are experiencing the classroom. We see ourselves as co-learners with our students. So to be acknowledged and honored by students and colleagues for the work that is our mission in our department is just incredible, really, really wonderful.
Nina, you have such a rich background before coming to John Jay. You're a licensed social worker. You are a researcher and policy advocate on criminal justice involved youth. You do harm reduction for teens. How does all of this inform your approach to teaching and what you do in the classroom?
I appreciate you asking that. I think it's so great to come from the field into the classroom, especially at John Jay, which is really a place where we are developing scholar activists, folks that are experts in the field of social justice and criminal justice. So it's wonderful to be able to share the experience that I've had with students and hopefully inform their career development, their academic choices. I'm one of the wonderful things that I do at John Jay. That's one of my favorite ways of teaching is the Vera Fellowship. It is a praxis experience for students where we co-teach like we do in the Department of Interdisciplinary Studies. I have the absolute delight of teaching with Caroline Wrights in the English department. And the students are in the field 10 hours a week working in a social justice organization through the Vera Institute for Justice, which is a very prestigious think tank that has international reach. And the students are able to come back into the classroom 2.5 hours a week and frame the experiences they're having in the field with the incredible theories that we're learning. And they're able to look at the discrepancy between the theory and what's actually happening. And they're able to be participant observers in their field placements and really critically examine how practices and policies and theories are interacting with the organizations they're working with the folks on the ground, related to really intense and timely issues like folks coming out of jail. There's a placement with women coming out of Rikers. We have an amazing fellow there right now, and she's been able to really see what the challenges are and how folks can be set up to fail when leaving incarceration. And because I worked in jails for over 25 years with young people, it's really wonderful to be able to share the experience that I've had with this incredible fellow and with the students. I think a lot of our students at John Jay, as you know as well, are really passionate about youth justice, but because they've only been exposed to justice through a law enforcement lens, they are really excited to learn more critical ways to understand how social welfare is also justice and what we can do in communities to help provide stability for young people.
In your teaching portfolio, you talk about how college students have been exposed to a fast food buffet of social media, and that this has caused you to implement a multimedia approach to helping students read, write, and apply critical analyses. Can you expand a bit, talk to us a little bit about what this approach is and what you've found works?
Absolutely. I'm just coming from class this morning. Especially online, we've been able to invigorate the space through all of us having access to the same levers. And because online, everybody can pull up any source material at any time. In the classroom, it's more of a fixed environment where we are at the front and we have access to the AV, and it's always a little bit clunky, and we always have to call the help desk. And online, everybody has immediate access. And so we really keep it very dynamic. We do sync classes that can go up to 2.5 hours. We have students do icebreakers to open up the space. And the icebreaker can be something related to the theme. I'm teaching gender and sexuality right now. So we have some really fun cahoots that students do, or maybe more profound icebreakers around the ways that we learned about sex growing up. What was our sex education experience in order to open up that door about sexuality and how what we are influenced by in terms of our religion, our culture, our peers, our families, media. We have the students take turns choosing a song to bring us into the classroom space, their favorite song, and talk about why that's their favorite song. This morning, because the theme of our class was on social action related to injustice around gender and sexuality. So the theme was around different protest movements and ways that we can do community activism. So we started with the Janelle Monáe song, which is about feminism and women's power. So that was really fun to talk about music as protest to open the space today. And then we use, like you said, multimedia buffet. So we show clips, we get into small groups, we do role play. And again, this is all transported very successfully online. So we've done role plays online. We do a role play about toxic and normative masculinity, and the students really get into it and are able to reflect and process and enjoy connecting with each other, doing role play synchronously online. But it's the same way that I work in the classroom. We just keep things very dynamic. We mix up the modalities, and we approach a topic from multiple perspectives and through multiple modalities. So that we'll do a close read, we'll learn a theory, we'll talk about the implications on practice and policy, but all about that same particular issue.
This year, you are a Teaching and Learning Center Faculty Fellow for Social Justice Pedagogies. And I think you're leading a small group of faculty through these social justice pedagogies, or through sort of co-creating these. Can you tell us what you're focusing on?
Absolutely. It has been one of the biggest joys of my career. It's such a privilege to get this meta experience of being able to take a step back with colleagues and really reflect on how we teach and reflect on how our identities interact with the subject matter and with the students, and how we can all be more effective and more social justice oriented in the classroom. It's so wonderful. So I was very honored to be appointed as the Social Justice Teaching Fellow. And instead of just doing kind of a one-shot workshop for the whole campus, I turned it into an opportunity for multiple faculty to come together and really discuss how we create a socially just classroom environment. So the way that it's structured, we have faculty from 5 different disciplines. Mm-hmm. And the goal is for us to come up with a dissemination plan at the end of the spring semester to bring back to our department so that we can inculcate our departmental culture with a more social justice oriented approach to teaching. So in the fall, we all took turns sharing social justice theory that we use that frames what we define as our social justice teaching pedagogy. And we have created now this clearinghouse of resources related to those particular theories. Really, really fun and exciting. So Paulo Freire's banking system of education and liberatory education is one example. And then we, now in the spring, we are each taking turns taking each other through an activity that stems from that theory. And we're using a theory that I actually taught in the fall called parallel process, where we are taking ourselves through the activity and then imagining what it would be like for our students. So extrapolating our experience of doing the classroom activity to our classrooms and to what our students may experience, and then reflecting on what works and what doesn't work and what we can do to tweak it. And we also bring in the beginning of our we're calling it a charrette because we're co-creating knowledge around social justice teaching. Our icebreaker is sharing the biggest challenge that we're dealing with right now in our classrooms, and one of our faculty is from Eastern Europe and has family in the Ukraine, and she was really struggling with how to talk about the war with her students and with her colleagues, and really wanted to make sure she was honoring and acknowledging the atrocities happening, as well as talking about how race plays a role and how the Black students were being treated when the war started. And so we had this really deep conversation about the international color line, about how to talk about trauma and atrocities with our students. And it was really quite profound. And we were able to do a really deep sharing about that. And then that led to a discussion about what happens when students say things, or faculty say things in the class that is perceived as offensive or is offensive, right? And use language that's stigmatizing, or language that perpetuates oppressive policies and practices. So we've just, again, depending on what's happening in our classrooms, we have really deep conversations. We had my colleague, Robert Robinson, amazing new faculty at John Jay in the Sikh department. He and I had an incident come up last week around relativism, because we're teaching social constructionism. And so the students were saying, well, if people can be any gender that they want to be, then why can't they be any age they want to be? I mean, is an age relative? Is an age a social construction? So we had this really wonderful conversation about, well, what is the consequence, right? It's about coming up, with folks coming together to come up with shared meaning, and then what is the consequence of that shared meaning, right? What is the consequence of not allowing folks to define themselves in terms of their gender and outside the gender binary, and what is the consequence in terms of age, right? So it ended up being this really wonderful conversation about relativism and the consequence of that, and it was fantastic. It was fantastic. But yeah, how to deal with students saying things that could be perceived as really offensive to students who may identify with a group that's being kind of questioned or stigmatized. So really, really deep, rich, wonderful discussion and support. I think our department is wonderful at taking care of the students, but I think it's really hard for all of us to make time to kind of take care of each other. And it's so beautiful to have that space, especially with the pandemic and with the political climate. I think all of us have been stretched emotionally, right? And the affective experience of our students has been really really intense, and a lot of students have experienced severe and profound trauma. And so for us to hold that safety for them in the classroom and create the space to allow for that affective experience to be expressed in a way that's fruitful and still feeds an intellectual environment. It's really, really interesting.
It is. I'm struck by what you called an icebreaker for the faculty group, where you share challenges in the classroom. What do you think? I know that it could go one or two ways, right? You could either start with strengths, or you can start with weaknesses. Although, I mean, maybe I'm overcoloring it by calling it a weakness. Why do you start with challenges? What is it that you're trying to do there? And would you do the same thing with students, right? Would you want to start with, what did you succeed at, or what are you having trouble with, and why? Why would you start with one or the other?
A wonderful question. I wouldn't start with challenges. And like the first semester that we were together every other week, I would not have started with challenges. We were doing more fun icebreakers, we were doing icebreakers that we would do with students and talking about how they would work for us. So each one of us were sharing different icebreakers that we use in the classroom with students, and then talking about how they would work. So it was like 2 truths and a lie. It was more fun, lighthearted. Let's build community and get to know you. So this semester, we've been starting with challenges because folks have come into the space saying, I'm dealing with something really hard right now. Can I talk to you about it? So it was about meeting each other where we're at. So that ended up happening for the last 2, where there was very relevant, prescient issues that were happening in real time that folks wanted support about. And it's because we've built trust and because we've built a space where we all feel safe sharing what's going on with each other. So similar to with my students, I think we start off with the more lighthearted, fun icebreakers. The students take turns doing them, which is a great way for them to get comfortable doing group work and collaborative learning. And then as the class progresses and we build trust and we create safety, it allows for folks to really be vulnerable and talk about what's difficult and ask for support and ask for help.
I want to talk to you about collaborative learning. I know it's something you've thought about. So, for me in my role, I think a lot about what students need to develop overall. And we know that collaboration and learning develops higher level thinking skills, communication skills, self-management, leadership skills. It's really valuable. But I also know from my experiences in the classroom, students resist it. They don't necessarily see group work as education. And our student engagement surveys that students say in these surveys that they're not doing a lot of collaborative learning at John Jay as compared with other colleges. What is your approach to collaborative learning and how do you know it's successful?
So it definitely has to be scaffolded. So I think exactly what you're saying. It really, it can't just be something that's thrown at students. The second class before the end of the semester, where it's like, okay, you're gonna have to do a final group project. Get into groups now. Come up with a presentation about everything we've been doing. It absolutely doesn't work well. So that's why, as I was sharing earlier, it has to be something that you introduce really in class 1 and talk about what it means and even reflect on what the challenges are that students have experienced in the past. What has their resistance been about? And then norm it, right? We do norms our first class where we talk about what we all need to create a safe and supportive learning environment. And the group process is part of that discussion. And then as I was sharing, having the students take turns doing the icebreakers every class so that they get comfortable with that collaborative learning and they see it as something that's fun. They see the effect of it. They see what happens when they lead a classroom space and how receptive their peers are and the validation they get from being leaders in the classroom space is really exciting. And then we, again, scaffold by doing group projects throughout. We'll do at least 2 group assignments before we have the final multimedia group presentation related to the final papers that everybody writes individually and related to, like, it's a culmination of what they've learned throughout the semester. So for instance, in the gender and sexuality class, we have the students get into small groups and create a timeline of trans identity. So they literally track the evolution of trans identity from any point in time to now. And it can be a medical perspective, from a policy perspective, psychological perspective, or all of the above. How media has shifted over time in its representation. It's really major events like the Stonewall riots. It's a really rich and exciting assignment. So they get together and they have to create a visual timeline, and it can look any way they want it to. They just have to use images and words in combination. And so that helps. And then we process how that assignment went, what was easy, what was hard. So again, we scaffold throughout so that they have the experience throughout. They're aware of what it is. The collaborative learning is woven into each of the class to some extent. So it's not all of a sudden, I had to be in this group and I was the only one that did the work. And you're getting these emails saying, blah, blah, didn't do anything. And right. And it's really been, and I've gotten better at that. I've learned that over time. It took me time to see what was effective in terms of making sure that it was a positive and an enriching experience and not just something that was happening to the students, right? It's something that the students felt like they were taking agency over and enjoying.
I hear a lot of faculty talking about rigor or relaxed standards, right? There's concern during the pandemic that in our effort to be compassionate towards students and to understand the difficulties of learning remotely, people have relaxed standards, and now there's a concern that it's a lack of rigor. And yet I've heard others say that rigor itself is an outdated word, or it's an approach to teaching that tends to privilege busy work or middle-class punch lists rather than learning. What does rigor mean to you, Nina?
It's a great question. And it's so funny that that's how they define it, because I only see rigor as depth, right? It's making sure that students are having a profound and comprehensive understanding of the topic. And as I was mentioning before, using a multimodal approach, using a multimedia approach, addressing a specific social justice issue from multiple perspectives through a theoretical understanding, through understanding the practice and the policy implications, having an experiential learning activity that relates to the particular topic. I think really that's rigor, right? That's what rigor is. It is having a depth and a breadth of experience related to that particular issue, so that students really comprehend what the nuances are of a particular social justice issue. I wanted to just real quick mention the importance of students being involved in our research. I have 3 original research projects that I've started since I've been at John Jay, and I think I've been able to work with my wonderful John Jay students as partners in qualitative and quantitative research. So that's been really great. I had a project on the ground in Brownsville where we were looking at this intervention where youth train police to prevent police from arresting, harassing, or harming young people. And so I had 2 John Jay students who were on the ground and interviewing young people and police with me and observing the intervention in real time and writing up field notes and crunching data and helping to write the report. So it was just really exciting and fun to be able to include students in that process. And then I published a book based on the data that I've now been teaching in the class. So it's just great to say that our students, right, have been part of that process. I think that's really great. And any time that we can include our students as in the field with us, it's just a tremendous learning experience for all of us.
What surprises you about your own teaching at this point in your career?
I think one of the things that I really loved that I'm learning more and more, and this wonderful colleague, Professor Robert Robinson, has really helped me with this, and my students are obviously the best teachers, is I've really learned to be quiet. I've learned less is more. I need to shut the F up more. And that's when I know that it's been a wonderful class. Robert and I were laughing the other day because we're like, oh my God, we barely spoke at all. It was the best class ever. We've really, really been delighting in this gender sexuality class. And it's just, if we are just facilitators, and this is the Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, is that you're not teachers, depositing your knowledge into students for them to regurgitate to you like good little robots. We are actually facilitators. They are to create a safe environment for students to identify what problems students want to solve, and helping students identify viable sources to come up with different ways of solving that problem, that social injustice. And so we are facilitators. That's what we do. So as the more seamlessly we can facilitate activities and spaces for students to move in and out, like we were just saying, of a rigorous understanding of their own ability to problem solve, and for them to come up with more and more innovative ways to address problems, to apply theory to case studies, to understanding the implications in terms of policy and practice, and coming up with new solutions, right? And then testing those solutions and seeing the efficacy is really, really exciting. And it's about, it's praxis again. It's reflecting and doing and reflecting and doing, and that's an infinite process and always more exciting, and staying open and being curious. Yeah, being quiet has been what I've been learning more and more. When I write my evaluations, my Form Cs, I always say I need to learn how to pull back, because I'm very intuitive in the classroom, and I have a sense. I'm very in tune with what's happening with all the students and what the needs are. So I can overreact sometimes and not just let things happen. So I'm getting better at being quiet.
Nina Rose Fischer, winner of the 2022 John Jay Distinguished Teaching Prize, thank you for your time.
Thank you.